The president's ongoing break from reality continued this morning on Twitter as we learn more about his insistence that Hurricane Dorian was going to hit Alabama. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. Well, it's another Monday in the Trump era, which means we all awoke to another fever dream of cruelty, stupidity, and corruption. Just in the last few days, the president launched a deranged attack on John Legend and Chrissy Teigen. A House panel is investigating the military's use of Trump-owned property in Scotland. The president ignited bipartisan fury when he announced that he invited the Taliban to Camp David just days before the anniversary of 9/11, while simultaneously canceling that meeting and upending months of delicate peace talks. And he attacked former South Carolina Governor Mark Sanford, who announced a primary challenge against him by trying to remind people that Sanford had an affair with a woman in Argentina, tweeting that Sanford was found in Argentina with his flaming dancer friend. Now, we think he meant to type flamingo dancer, which also would have been wrong because it's flamenco dancer, which also would have been wrong because there is no evidence Sanford's former mistress had ever been a flamenco dancer. It's like a 7-layer dip of presidential insanity. It's stupid stacked on top of stupid, stacked on top of stupid, and then I guess guacamole. Also, I'd like to remind everyone, this is not the first time Trump has gotten details of this story wrong. To explain his disappearance, when he was having the affair back in 2009, Sanford famously claimed he had been hiking the Appalachian Trail. Trump has tried to mock him for that before, but he's gotten that detail wrong as well, and he did it again today.
Mr. Tallahassee Trail or Appalachian Trail, he's the Appalachian Trail, right? The Tallahassee Trail is nice, too, but I think he was the Appalachian Trail. Never liked him too much. I wasn't a big fan. The Tallahassee Trail must be a beautiful place. Unfortunately, he didn't go there. He was supposed to be vacationing on the Tallahassee Trail, but he was actually in Argentina. I don't know. Jim, do they have a Tallahassee Trail in Argentina?
No, they don't. They don't have one in Tallahassee. It doesn't exist. The Tallahassee Trail sounds like the name of a chain restaurant where they let you throw peanut shells on the floor. And by the way, almost everything I just told you about happened before 8 a.m. this morning. It's hard enough to process all of this insanity an entire day, but it's worse when you haven't even had your coffee yet. I never thought I'd say this to a president, but please sleep in. We need to take one of those dumb novelty t-shirts that says, "Don't talk to me until I've had my coffee," and pass it into law. And while all of this was happening, Trump was also continuing his use of the presidency to enrich himself. Last week, Trump reportedly encouraged Vice President Mike Pence to stay at his golf resort in Ireland. And on Friday, it was reported that an Air Force crew made a stop at Trump's Scottish resort. Democrats are investigating whether these obviously corrupt practices violate the Constitution. So Trump lashed out again this morning on Twitter, distancing himself from both incidents.
Quote, "I had nothing to do with the decision of our great Vice President Mike Pence to stay overnight at one of the Trump-owned resorts in Doonbeg, Ireland.
I know nothing about an Air Force plane landing in an airport which I don't own and have nothing to do with it near Turnberry Resort, which I do own in Scotland, and filling up with fuel with the crew staying overnight at Turnberry. They have good taste. Nothing to do with me."
Wow, he is tap dancing faster than a flaming dancer. Also, you can't just tweet, in all caps, "nothing to do with me," right after you admit they stayed at your hotel and you put in parentheses, "they have good taste." He's like a guy who gets caught on camera robbing a liquor store and says, "That's not me, but whoever it is very handsome." And it's not just the Air Force and the Vice President who are helping line Trump's pockets. It was also reported last week that Attorney General Bill Barr had booked Trump's hotel for a $30,000 holiday party. Trump was asked about all the money flowing from taxpayers to his private businesses last week and once again claimed he had nothing to do with it, while also taking the opportunity to advertise his resorts.
Can you speak to your involvement in the Vice President's plans to stay at a Trump property in Ireland?
Well, I had no involvement other than it's a great place. It's Doonbeg. I own it. It's in Ireland. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. I don't suggest anything. I don't suggest it, nor did I with the Attorney General. I never spoke to the Attorney General about using my hotel. I have a lot of hotels all over the place, and people use them because they're the best. I mean, they're the best. But he's using the hotel, and people like my product. What can I tell you? Can't help it. But, and I guess they say we want to stay at a place that's better than someplace else.
Well, that is really quite the endorsement. Sandals should steal that slogan. Sandals, a place that's better than someplace else. Of course, all of this comes after Trump spent the entire week lying about a hurricane and insisting that it was going to hit Alabama, going even so far as to alter an official forecast with a Sharpie. Now, we don't want to keep talking about this. We would have been happy to just let this go as another one of the million dumb things Trump has done. We talked about it on Thursday, had a few days off, and figured we'd wake up to a new day of fresh crimes and flaming dancers. But Trump keeps talking about it. And as we all know, once Trump gets called out for a lie, he will not stop until he gets the last word. Everything else has to grind to a halt while we watch this sweaty weirdo bark at reporters and insist that he's correct by tweeting nonstop or doing that thing where he points at his own brain to show us all how smart he is. They did a CAT scan of my brain and said it was huge. Here, let me show you a photo. I mean, look at him. This looks like the start of a kid's video called Head, Shoulders, Knees, and I Can't Reach My Toes. Now, Trump initially pretended he had no idea who defaced his hurricane map. Well, it won't surprise you to learn that after the Washington Post did some digging, they found out who the culprit was. It was Trump, who used a black Sharpie to mark up an official National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration map, which he displayed during an Oval Office briefing on Wednesday, according to a White House official who spoke on the condition of anonymity. No one else writes like that on a map with a black Sharpie. It's amazing to me. The reporters actually had to spend time on this. They actually had to call up anonymous sources and get them to reveal who the Sharpie culprit was. It's like Watergate, except Trump is his own deep throat. He's cheap throat. Don't worry, we don't need to pay for a new map. I'll just draw on it with a Sharpie. Everyone will think it's real. It's probably what he did for each of Eric's birthdays. Now, Trump has tried to muddy the waters and confuse everyone by making this as complicated as possible. So let's keep it very simple. Last Sunday, September 1st, Trump tweeted that Alabama will most likely be hit much harder than anticipated. And then 20 minutes later, the National Weather Service in Birmingham, Alabama, tweeted Alabama will not see any impacts from Dorian. And as we learned this weekend, that correction wasn't the National Weather Service going out of their way to embarrass Trump. They had to issue that correction specifically in response to Alabama residents who were freaked out by the president's tweet. The Washington Post reported that the Birmingham office sent the tweet after receiving a flurry of phone calls from concerned residents following Trump's message. We're now at the point where the president is scaring people for no reason. He is basically the WebMD of presidents. Except no matter what symptom, no matter what symptom you type in, the response says, sounds bad, you're probably gonna die. Seriously, think about that. People were calling because the president said they might be in danger, and instead of reassuring them after he was corrected, he doubled down. It's like if you stood up in a crowded theater and yelled fire, and then a theater employee said, everyone calm down, there's no fire, and instead of apologizing, you took out a can of gasoline and a match and said, well, there's one now. But the craziest and most dangerous part of all of this is that Trump has now involved other parts of the government in his war on reality. Just today, we learned that Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross threatened firings at NOAA after Trump Dorian tweets. That comes after NOAA staff were instructed not to contradict the president's Sharpie hurricane forecast. And on top of that, Trump has an entire party in lockstep with him. Just yesterday, Republican Senator Roy Blunt dismissed Trump's compulsive lying, although he seemed to pause when asked if Americans could trust the president.
Should the American public take the president at his word when he speaks?
Well, the president communicates differently than anybody else who's
You've
ever
said
had
that before,
job.
but
and as a candidate, he can. The American
but he's president of the
public,
United States, and when he issues we're politicizing the weather. I mean, is there anything left?
Well, I actually, now I've spent most of this month at home in Missouri, and I think this whole Sharpie thing is way being overplayed.
Are you worried that the credibility of the words of the president of the United States has been eroded?
No.
Should not take you that long to answer when someone asks you if the president you support is a liar. That's like a husband who just got back from a guy's trip to Vegas. Did you have fun, honey? Yeah. Did you get a lap dance? No. And then there's Fox News, an entire propaganda network that, with few exceptions, reinforces the president's deranged alternate reality on a daily basis. Then denies obvious facts that are plain to our eyes. In fact, just last month, an anchor on Fox Business actually insisted during an interview with one of Trump's Republican primary challengers that the president has never told a lie.
I'm running against this president because I believe he lies virtually every time he opens his mouth. You know that too.
No, I do not.
I believe he's morally unfit.
I do not know that.
And
Don't
I believe,
do not
and I
impute that
believe
to me, Joe
he's a
Walsh.
danger
Don't
to
do
this
it.
country. Stuart, do you believe this president lies?
No.
You don't believe he's ever lied?
He exaggerates and spins.
Yeah, those are other ways of saying he lies. Do Fox News anchors keep a thesaurus with them at all times for moments like this? Does the president lie? No. He beguiles, obfuscates, prevaricates, and dissembles. Also, it's very hard to come off as a moron when you're a guy with a British accent using the word impute, but somehow this guy managed to do it. Although, if Brexit has taught us anything, it's that British people are just as prone to putting dummies in charge as we are, like this dummy.
You know the caution. You know what you have to say when you collar someone. You do not have to say anything. Is that right? But anything you no, but if you fail to mention something which you later rely on. Hang on, let's get this right. Do you remember it? They all know it. Which you later rely on in court may be taken into account. Anyway, you get the gist.
I don't know. I don't know if we did get the gist. I mean, that's their prime minister is like if Donald Trump had one of those GPS settings where you could just switch him to a British accent. I think the best way for Britain out of the European Union is through the Tallahassee Trail. Although my favorite Boris Johnson clip from this last week, hands down, has to be this one.
Please leave my town.
I will very soon.
That might be the most British thing I've ever seen. Good day, sir. Now, please do off. Cheerio. Americans, of course, we are slightly less polite. The British one was good, but I do like the American remake. The President of the United States isn't just lying, he's concocting elaborate fantasies to defend those lies, strong-arming the rest of his government to justify those lies, and relying on the support of an entire political party and right-wing media apparatus to spread those lies. It might seem trivial when it's just about Sharpies or flaming dancers, but Trump's war on reality also has real consequences for real people. At this point, we'd be much better off if instead of being president, Trump just spent his time hiking
The Tallahassee Trail.
This has been a closer look.